Standardized coding conventions in the software engineering community help keep code relevant and useful for clients, future developers, and coders themselves. Any professional programmer will tell you that they spend more time reading code than writing it. Working on a code base is more likely than writing something from scratch. As a result, it's critical that your code is simple enough for other developers to understand. In this video, we'll look at some of Salesforce Apex's coding conventions and best practices. Number 1. Avoid DML Circle social statements in loops. Avoid using DML statements inside loops to avoid exceeding the DML governor limit. Instead, try batching the data into a list and invoking your DML once on that list of data outside the loop. Database class methods, DML operations, SOCL queries, social queries, approval class methods, email sending, async scheduling, or queuing within loops can cause governor limit exceptions. Instead, try to batch up the data into a list and invoke the operation once on that list of data outside the loop. SOCL/social calls within loops can cause governor limit exceptions. Instead of using SOCL/social queries in the loop A, use collections such as map, list, and set. Here is a bad example. DML statement written in the for loop. The governor limit will be exceeded if there are more than 150 account records to update. Number 2. Avoid hardcoding ID. When deploying Apex code between sandbox and production environments or installing Force.com app exchange packages, it is crucial to avoid hardcoding IDs in the Apex code. As a result, if the record IDs change between environments, the logic can dynamically identify the correct data to operate against and not fail. In this code snippet, IDs are hard-coded. If you run the above code in different environments, it will fail. The code snippet below is the best way to implement this type of requirement. Number 3. Use only one trigger per S object type. Multiple triggers on the same object are not recommended because Salesforce cannot guarantee the order of execution, so we should only add one trigger per object. Benefits of using one trigger per object template. This pattern allows you to control the order of execution. Reusability. When you write your logic in Apex class, then it can be reused outside of trigger as well. For example, in the Lightning Component Controller, Test class, Batch class, Visual Force Page Controller, etc. Elegance. This design pattern elevates the code's elegance, organization, and modularity. Here is the example of one trigger per object template. Number 4. Avoid logic in the trigger. Triggers are less flexible and suited to applying a good encapsulation style because they do not allow methods like regular classes. Therefore, delegate the triggers to a regular class, often called trigger handler/helper class. To avoid putting your logic in a trigger, use a single trigger per object template and write a handler and helper class. Number 5. Bulkify your Apex code logic. You should write bulkified code so that it can handle multiple records at the same time and process it efficiently. Take a look at the code below. This is a bad example of code that has not been bulkified. Salesforce Data Loader tool is used to upload the bulk records. This code can only process a single record in a chunk of 200 records. Number 6. Apex SOCL injection. Detects the use of untrusted, unescaped variables in DML queries. Example. Select ID from contact where is deleted equals false and name like %test% or name like %. The results show all contacts, not just the non-deleted ones. A SOCL injection flaw can be used to modify the intended logic of any vulnerable query. To prevent a SOCL injection attack, avoid using dynamic SOCL queries. Instead, use static queries and binding variables. The vulnerable example can be rewritten using static SOCL as follows. If you must use dynamic SOCL, use the escape single quotes method to sanitize user-supplied input. This method adds the escape character, to all single quotation marks in a string that is passed in from a user. The method ensures that all single quotation marks are treated as enclosing strings, instead of database commands. Number 7. Apex unit test should not use see all data true. Apex unit tests should not use @test see all data equals true because it exposes existing database data to unexpected changes by tests. By annotating your class with @test see all data equals true, you enable test methods to access all log records. The best practice, however, is to run Apex tests with data silos using @test see all data equals false. Number 8. For loops must use braces. Avoid using for statements without surrounding braces. If the code formatting or indentation is lost, it becomes difficult to distinguish the code being controlled from the rest. Number 9. Naming conventions. The code is written once but read many times by others on the project team and even those from other teams. As a result, readability is essential. Readability is simply figuring out what the code does in less time. Every project or team can have its own naming conventions, but the Apex PMD naming convention is generally used. Number 10. Avoid debug statements. Debug statements contribute to longer transactions and consume Apex CPU time even when debug logs are not captured. When possible, use other debugging techniques, such as the Apex replay debugger and checkpoints, which can cover the majority of use cases. Thank you for your time. Subscribe to our channel to see more videos like this.